Hey guys, it's Eric here with Crystal Cove Conservancy. Our next step is to use a list of factors that your project team created to set up a computational model. To do that, we'll use a platform called SageModeler. SageModeler is a really cool free online tool that you can use to create computer models of different systems. One quick note before you get started, only one person can edit the model on SageModeler. So if you're working with a project team, you'll need to pick one person to make changes and manipulate the model, and then have that same person share their screen so that everyone else can see it. Using SageModeler is very easy. Once you click on the link and open up your model in the center, you'll see this modeling question, which is what might cause the sand volume on the North Beach to increase or decrease? To start, we're only going to be thinking about the environmental factors on your list. That will give us a chance to think about how the system typically works if it isn't being influenced by people. We'll add in the anthropogenic components and factors later. The first thing you'll want to do is choose a picture to represent the environmental factors that you think are important to include. On the upper left-hand side, you can click on New Image and search for images of those environmental factors. I'm going to demonstrate this by doing sand volume, as that is the main component within our modeling question. So I'll search for sand, look for an image that I want to use, so it's going to use that one, and click on Add Image. When I'm done, I can press the X here and go back to my screen here. Next, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to hover over the image, click, and drag it to the center of my model. Then, as you add in these factors, make sure you always label them. So I'm going to label this sand volume. I can continue to add other environmental components that I think will influence the input and outputs of sand, and therefore the sand volume on the North Beach from my list. So I might search for photos that represent wave frequency. So I'm going to look for a photo of a wave, and I'm going to choose this one right here, and then I'm going to click Add Image. And then I'm going to go ahead and close that. And just like before, I'm going to drag that into our model and label it wave frequency. Next, I'm going to want to connect these factors that I added into my model. So the way that I do that is I hover over one factor. So I'm going to hover over wave frequency, and you'll notice that these things appear at the top. You're going to want to hover over this arrow, click, and then drag it over to sand volume until it lights up. Once it does so, you can let it go. What this means is that now there is a relationship between factor A, which is wave frequency, and factor B, which is the sand volume. Next, I want to define what that relationship is. So to do so, I can double click on the arrow that I created and a window will appear. So on this window, you'll always get a sentence frame that an increase in factor A causes factor B to, and then you'll be able to describe that relationship. So an increase in wave frequency causes sand volume to, and I'll click on select an option, and my options are going to be increase, decrease, or vary. I think it's going to decrease, and then it's going to ask you by how much. So you'll have the options of about the same, a lot, a little, more and more, and less and less. And I think it's going to decrease by a little. So I'll go ahead and choose that. You'll notice that SageModeler immediately creates a graph that kind of shows this relationship. And then it asks, why do you think so? So I think that an increase in wave frequency causes sand volume to decrease by a little, because the more waves there are, the more sand that can be taken out. So I can write something in here like, more waves means that more sand can be taken out. And then once I've done that, you can go ahead and click back into the center of your model to lose that relationship. If you double click on your arrow again, you'll see that your relationship is still there, so you can always go back and modify it as well. And then I'm going to keep doing that and adding each environmental component that I have on my list into my model. As you work on your model, you might realize that you have questions about how one factor interacts with another factor, and that is totally okay. Use your field notebook to jot down any questions or comments that your project team has so that you can revisit them later and revise your model. Finally, the last thing you'll want to know is how to save your model. To do that, you can click on the upper left hand here where the three lines are, and you can click on Save. This will ask you to save your model as a file in Google Drive, or you can save it as a local file onto your desktop. Alternatively, the other thing that you can do is you can go over to Share, click on Get Link to Shared View, enable sharing, and then once this generates a link, you can share the link that is provided here with whoever you want to share it with. And that's pretty much it. So spend some time playing with SageModeler and setting up your model. When you're done, go ahead and move on and I'll show you how to add in the anthropogenic components.